Welcome to the Nepali Diaspora Network podcast, which is, your ultimate source for news, views, and insights for Nepalese worldwide. I'm so glad you're joining us for this deep dive today.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. We've got a really intense lineup of topics to cover.
We really do. And to start off, I want you to just picture this. It's the morning of March 27th.
Right, Ram Navami.
Exactly. The highly auspicious Hindu festival of Ram Navami. And a 35-year-old former rapper just casually walks into the presidential palace in Nepal.
It's just such a surreal image.
It totally is. I mean, he's wearing a traditional black cloth topi, a matching dark jacket, and of course, his signature dark sunglasses.
Right.
And just hours before stepping into that room, he released a hip-hop anthem that is, currently exploding online. I mean, it racked up nearly 3 million views before the ink on his oath was even dry.
Unbelievable.
And then he places his hand on the Constitution and is sworn in as the Prime Minister.
It honestly sounds like a scene pulled straight out of a political thriller. You half expect a director to yell, "Cut." Yeah, seriously.
But, the implications of that oath are going to completely reshape the entire region.
Absolutely. So our mission for you today in this deep dive is to unpack this absolute political earthquake. We're looking at a massive stack of sources from late March 2026.
Yeah, we've got the latest from the Nepali Diaspora Digest newsletter, plus some really critical reports from Al Jazeera, the Washington Post, and the World Bank.
Right. And we want to understand the mechanics of this new government, the immediate global economic crises threatening to derail them, and what this all means for the global Nepalese diaspora watching from afar.
Yeah, and I think it's crucial to ground the excitement here. I mean, the victory is undeniably historic, but this new government, they don't get the luxury of a honeymoon period.
No, not at all.
They are stepping immediately into a storm of global economic pressures and a deeply complex migrant crisis. The celebration in Kathmandu is colliding with geopolitical reality at an alarming speed. Let's actually start with that celebration, though, because the swearing in of Balendra Shah, or Balen Shah, at the Shital Niwaz, it just shatters multiple glass ceilings at once.
It really does.
He's Nepal's 47th prime minister, and its youngest ever. But perhaps more importantly, the sources note he is the first Mahezi prime minister.
Right, which is huge.
It is. And for a global listener who might not grasp the weight of that, we probably need to explain the historical context of the Mahezi people.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is how fundamentally this disrupts the traditional power structure. The Mahezi are communities primarily from the southern Terai plains of Nepal, which border India.
Okay.
And historically, political power in Nepal has been fiercely concentrated among the hill-dwelling elites in Kathmandu.
Right, the establishment.
Exactly. The southern plains have often felt politically marginalized, underrepresented in the highest levels of government. So seeing a Mahezi leader take the highest executive office, it isn't just a win for a new political party.
It's a profound restructuring.
Yeah, a total restructuring of who actually gets to hold power in the country.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit more. Because if you follow Nepal's political history, it's basically defined by these fragile, rotating, multi-party coalitions.
Oh, absolutely. It's been chaotic.
For decades, running the government has been it's like trying to drive a car with 5 different people in the back seat.
Right.
All of them yanking on the steering wheel, threatening to jump out if they don't get their way. But this victory feels entirely different.
It is different purely by the numbers. I mean, Balen Shah's Rastriya Swatantra Party, the RSP, they secured a staggering 182 out of 275 seats in the parliament.
Wow.
So to use your analogy, they've kicked everyone else out of the car. They have the steering wheel completely to themselves.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's the country's first single-party majority since 1999. There is literally no need for coalition horse trading anymore.
Which means they have the ultimate freedom to build a cabinet based on actual skill rather than, handing out political favors. And the sources mention this new cabinet is incredibly lean.
Very lean. They formed a cabinet of just 15 members.
Only 15?
Yeah. In the past, those fragile coalition governments would sometimes bloat to 30 or more ministers just to distribute titles and keep all the rival factions happy.
Oh, right, just to keep the peace.
Exactly. But out of these new 15 members, 10 are under the age of 40, and a third are women. And they are bringing in some serious technocratic weight.
Like who?
Well, look at the new Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, Dr. Swarnam Waghel.
Oh, yeah.
At 51, he's actually the oldest member of the cabinet. He's a PhD economist who previously served as the chief economic advisor for the Asia-Pacific region at the UNDP.
And he had significant roles at the World Bank, too, right?
Exactly. So he brings a ton of experience.
And while they are stacking the cabinet with these young technocrats, the traditional powerhouses are just collapsing.
Total freefall.
The sources show the Nepali Congress Party has been reduced to just 38 seats, and the CPN-UML, the Communist Party of Nepal, which has been this dominant Marxist-Leninist force for years, they're down to a mere 25 seats.
It's a massive realignment.
It is, but I have to pose a question about the RSP's internal dynamics here.
Yeah.
Because there is a glaring contradiction in their leadership structure right now.
Yeah, the Rabi Lamachane situation.
Right. The party's president, Rabi Lamachane, just gave this strict orientation warning to newly elected MPs. He told them the party is going to enforce a right to recall policy if they step out of line.
Very strict discipline.
Exactly. Yet Lamachane himself is currently fighting a suspension from parliamentary duties due to his own legal battles.
Right.
So how does a party leader enforce ruthless discipline when his own legal standing is compromised?
It creates a highly precarious dynamic.
Yeah.
You basically have a massive split between the party's ideological leadership under Lamachane and the actual executive governmental power now wielded by Prime Minister Shah.
That sounds like a recipe for trouble.
It's a huge internal vulnerability. And the opposition, even though they were decimated in the polls, they will undoubtedly try to leverage that split to fracture this new ruling party.
So they have absolute political control in Kathmandu. But that domestic control doesn't mean much when the money keeping the entire country afloat comes from outside its borders.
That is the harsh reality.
The sources dedicate a massive amount of ink to the Middle East. Let's look at what's happening in the Gulf right now.
Yeah, so following the U.S. and Israel strikes on Iran, the geopolitical ripple effects across the Middle East are having this devastating immediate impact on Nepalese migrant workers.
How many workers are we talking about?
We're looking at an estimated 1.7 million Nepalese citizens currently working in the Gulf region.
1.7 million. And the sources show a massive drop in labor permits. But how bad is the human toll on the ground? Like, what do the actual numbers look like for someone trying to get to these countries for work right now?
The pipeline is practically frozen. Labor permits have been completely halted for 12 countries. Yeah, including major employment destinations like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Kuwait. In March, only 52,944 permits were issued.
Which sounds like a lot, but...
It's a drastic drop from the normal monthly average of around 73,000.
Wow.
We are seeing reports of over 2,000 workers being denied permits every single day. And tragically, this bureaucratic and diplomatic paralysis is impacting repatriations too.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the sources report that 22 bodies of deceased Nepalese workers are currently stranded in the Gulf. Families are waiting over a month just to bring their loved ones home.
That is just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But if I'm a worker currently stuck in Qatar or Saudi Arabia, why does an airstrike in Iran freeze my specific visa system?
That's a good question.
Our sources mention that a lack of digital awareness is putting these stranded migrants at severe legal risk. But what is the actual mechanism there? How does a geopolitical conflict turn a migrant worker into a legal target?
Well, it comes down to how host countries secure their borders during a conflict. When geopolitical tensions spike, Gulf nations rapidly tighten security. And that often involves instantly digitizing and heavily monitoring their visa and employment tracking systems. The problem is that many Nepalese migrant laborers come from rural areas and lack high-level digital literacy. They rely on physical paperwork, or they use brokers.
So when the system goes digital...
Exactly. When a host country suddenly mandates that all employment status must be verified through a complex, newly updated digital portal, these workers just cannot navigate it.
That's terrifying.
If their digital visa lapses or fails to register properly, they instantly become undocumented aliens in a foreign country. That exposes them to immediate detention, massive fines, or deportation.
So they were basically trapped by a digital wall they don't know how to climb.
Precisely.
And if we zoom out, the macroeconomic terror of this freeze is staggering. The sources note that remittances, the money these workers send back home, account for nearly 29% of Nepal's entire GDP.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, you realize that Gulf countries alone contribute 41% of those total remittances.
41%.
That equated to roughly 422 billion rupees in just the first 6 months of the fiscal year.
Unbelievable.
That financial tap is suddenly being choked off. This is why the new labor minister, Deepak Kumar Shah, is inheriting arguably the most high-stakes economic portfolio in the country.
No kidding.
The livelihoods of hundreds of thousands of families depend on his office negotiating a geopolitical conflict where Nepal holds absolutely zero leverage.
But that labor freeze abroad, it has to be physically choking Nepal's domestic economy too, right? Because Nepal doesn't produce its own petroleum.
Not at all.
So how does a shipping disruption in the Strait of Hormuz directly spike the cost of everyday goods in landlocked Nepal?
It's this brutal supply chain domino effect.
Yeah.
Global crude oil prices have surged above $105 a barrel due to the shipping disruptions.
Right.
And because Nepal is landlocked, every drop of petroleum and every heavy construction material has to travel by sea to Indian ports. Then it has to be trucked up through the mountains into Nepal.
So the transport costs just explode.
Exactly. When the global price of oil spikes, the cost of that overland trucking skyrockets. And that inflation is instantly baked into the price of every physical good entering the country.
And we see that inflation hitting the consumer instantly. The Nepal Oil Corporation just hiked prices for the second time in a single month.
Yeah, it's rough.
Petrol is up to 187 rupees per liter in Kathmandu. Diesel is at 167 rupees. The sources detail how families are literally rationing half-filled LPG cooking gas cylinders because the supply chain is so degraded.
It's affecting everything.
Even construction. Steel rods have jumped to 105 rupees per kilogram, and trying to leave the country is exorbitant. Economy flights to the U.S. have hit 300,000 rupees.
This creates a remarkably volatile environment for a new government that, let's remember, campaigned on a promise of rapid economic revitalization.
Right. But here's where it gets really interesting, though. When you look at the financial markets, there is this bizarre, almost contradictory contrast happening.
Oh, you mean the stock market surge?
Yeah. It's like a startup that just fired its toxic board of directors. The employees inside the company are thrilled, morale is sky high, and they fully believe in the new CEO.
Good analogy.
We see this exact sentiment in the domestic stock market, NEPSE. It just surged past 2,950 points, with a massive single-day turnover exceeding 13 billion rupees.
People are optimistic.
Domestic investors are euphoric about finally having a stable, single-party government. But on the other side, the venture capitalists in Silicon Valley who watched that startup endure a year of chaotic boardroom brawls, they are pausing their funding.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it. Domestic confidence is surging, but international capital is fleeing. Foreign direct investment, or FDI, commitments plummeted to just 386 million rupees by mid-March.
You would think a stable, absolute majority government would make international investors rush in. Why are they running away? Is it just a lag in the data, or they seem a structural risk that the local investors are ignoring?
They are looking at recent history. The Department of Industry directly links this collapse in foreign investment to the Gen Z protests from September 2025.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, those youth-led protests were politically transformative. They essentially broke the back of the old political establishment and paved the way for Balen, Shah and the RSP.
Which was the goal.
Right. However, those same protests caused an estimated 86 billion rupees in physical and economic damages.
86 billion. Wow.
When international investors see that level of systemic disruption, it completely shatters their confidence. They view the market as fundamentally unstable, regardless of who just won the election.
So the youth burned down the old political house to get a new landlord, but now the country can't secure the foreign capital needed to afford the repairs.
Precisely. And Dr. Wagle, the new finance minister, is working against a ticking clock here. In November 2026, Nepal is scheduled to graduate from its least developed country, or LDC, status.
Okay, for a listener who hears graduating from least developed country status, that sounds like a positive milestone.
You'd think so.
Right. So why is the International Labor Organization warning that this graduation could cost Nepal nearly $1 billion over 5 years?
Because of the hidden cost of losing trade preferences. Currently, as an LDC, Nepal enjoys tariff-free access to major Western markets.
Oh, I see.
This is the lifeblood of their export economy, particularly for industries like ready-made garments and carpets. When they graduate, they lose those special exemptions.
So their exports just instantly become more expensive.
Exactly. Their goods will suddenly become less competitive on the global market. The ILO estimates this specific loss in competitiveness could cost 132,000 domestic jobs.
That's devastating.
And roughly half of those jobs are held by women, which makes the social impact even worse.
That is a staggering economic forecast to inherit. But looking closely at these sources, there is a fascinating mechanism at play where this immediate fuel crisis is accidentally accelerating green technology.
Oh, the hydropower pivot.
Yes. Because imported LPG cooking gas is so scarce and expensive right now, citizens are rapidly pivoting to domestic power. Nepal has massive, abundant hydropower resources.
Right, it's one of their biggest assets.
Just last year, 132,000 electric induction stoves were imported. The geopolitical fuel shock is literally forcing a grassroots green energy transition.
It is a vital pivot towards self-reliance. And speaking of modernizing infrastructure, the World Bank just approved a $50 million digital transformation project for Nepal.
That's a nice chunk of change.
It is. This is designed to digitize public services, which perfectly aligns with the new government's core platform of anti-corruption.
How does digitization stop corruption, exactly?
Well, when you digitize government systems, you remove the physical human bottlenecks, the specific desks and clerks, where bribery and extortion typically occur.
Oh, that makes total sense. You remove the middleman demanding a bribe to stamp your paper.
Exactly.
Well, all of this intense economic pressure brings us to the role of the global Nepalese diaspora. They are acting as a vital financial lifeline through their remittances, as we discussed.
Yes.
But they are no longer just sending money silently. They are highly organized, and they're demanding a real seat at the table.
The level of coordination is unprecedented right now. A widely circulated editorial in New York recently outlined the specific demands of the U.S. Nepalese diaspora.
And the NRNA is involved too, right?
Yeah, simultaneously, the Non-Resident Nepali Association, the NRNA, has adopted a comprehensive 12-point Kathmandu declaration. Their new leadership just met directly with the foreign minister to push for legislative amendments.
What exactly are the mechanics of what they're asking for? Like, how do they want the law to change?
They are demanding meaningful voting rights for non-resident Nepalese, which would radically alter the country's electoral math.
I bet.
They want clear, constitutionally protected dual citizenship pathways, simplified legal channels to inject foreign investment without all the bureaucratic red tape. And crucially, they are demanding enforceable diplomatic labor protections for those 1.7 million workers stranded in the Middle East. They basically want their legal rights to reflect the fact that their money is keeping the nation's economy afloat.
And we have to contrast that proactive, highly organized political stance with the incredibly harsh reality many in the diaspora are currently facing in their host countries.
It's a very tough time abroad.
The sources note that under the second term of the Trump administration in the United States, deportations are climbing sharply.
Yeah.
585 Nepalese individuals have been deported recently, with January 2026 setting a record high for a single month. Additionally, there is an ongoing immigrant visa suspension affecting 75 countries, heavily impacting Nepal.
Right.
Legal pathways are narrowing, and families are literally being separated. Remember, we're just reporting what the sources state here to give you the full picture of what the diaspora is facing.
Right. And this creates an intense pressure cooker for the global community. The diaspora is being squeezed politically and legally abroad, which makes their ties to Nepal even more critical.
Absolutely.
Because of this, we are seeing incredible community-led efforts to build independent safety nets.
Like what?
Well, for example, the platform Balen.uk has emerged as a really vital digital resource for Nepalese living in the United Kingdom.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah, it functions as a centralized hub connecting the community. It offers classifieds for jobs, housing, local events, and it's great for promoting Nepalese-owned businesses.
That's fantastic.
It is. It's a prime example of the diaspora creating its own infrastructure to survive international pressure and support each other.
Totally. And if you are a listener based in the UK navigating all of this, checking out Balayat.uk is definitely a smart move for finding those community resources and just staying connected. But looking back at Kathmandu, this raises a massive question. The RSP owes a huge portion of its grassroots energy to the young Nepalese living abroad, who championed them tirelessly on social media.
Right, the diaspora youth were huge for them.
Can this new government actually deliver on the complex constitutional and citizenship reforms the diaspora is demanding?
That is the ultimate test. Governing is fundamentally different from campaigning.
It really is.
They now have to translate viral momentum into dense constitutional law, all while navigating an opposition that actively wants them to fail.
So what does this all mean for the day-to-day spirit of the people living through this?
It's a lot to handle.
It is. Amidst all this heavy policy analysis, the massive trade deficit hitting 1.1 trillion rupees, and even a concerning measles outbreak in the Balen district, I want to highlight a profound data point from our sources.
Oh, the happiness report.
Yes. The 2026 World Happiness Report was just released. Globally, Nepal ranks 99th. But within South Asia, Nepal is officially the #1 happiest country in the entire region.
That's amazing.
They ranked ahead of India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka.
That metric is deeply revealing, actually. The World Happiness Report evaluates structural factors like social support networks, personal freedom, and societal generosity.
Right.
So to rank first in the region, despite enduring immense political upheaval, global fuel shocks, and a migrant crisis, it speaks volumes.
It really does.
It points to an underlying cultural resilience and incredibly deep community bonds that economic metrics simply cannot capture.
Resilience is exactly the right word.
Yeah.
And you see that joy and resilience bubbling up in their cultural exports, particularly in sports.
Oh, the cricket news?
Yes. Nepalese cricket is experiencing an absolute golden era right now. 8 players from the national team just secured contracts to play in the inaugural European T20 League in Brussels this June.
It is a massive leap for their soft power and international sporting profile.
The national team captain, Rohit Patil, just signed with the Ghent Gladiators. And star spinner Sandeep Lemishane was picked up by the Liège Red Lions.
That's so cool.
For a country where cricket was barely a blip on the global radar a generation ago, exporting 8 players to a European franchise league is monumental.
It's historic.
And the fans back home are fiercely engaged. A recent report showed that digital entertainment interactions around cricket in Nepal surged by an unbelievable 442%.
Which highlights just how mobile-first and digitally interconnected the Nepalese population has become. The data shows 70% of audience attention there is now consumed via mobile phones.
Let's synthesize the absolute roller coaster we've just unpacked today. We are witnessing a historic, youth-led, single-party government taking the absolute reins of power, led by a 35-year-old former rapper.
Right.
They take the wheel, only to immediately slam into the reality of global oil shocks spiking their domestic inflation, and a massive geopolitical migrant crisis in the Gulf, freezing their primary source of income.
It's a tough hand to be dealt.
Yet, they are backed by a fiercely loyal, highly organized global diaspora demanding their legal rights. And they govern a culture that somehow maintains the deepest social bonds and the highest happiness ranking in South Asia.
It is an incredibly complex tapestry of vulnerability and strengths. But I want to leave you with a final lingering thought that connects the dots here.
Okay, let's hear it.
We discussed the World Happiness Report, naming Nepal the happiest in South Asia. But that exact same global report included a very stark warning about the social media trap. It detailed how digital platforms are rapidly eroding youth well-being, causing isolation, and damaging mental health globally.
The comparison culture, the constant doom scrolling.
Yes, all of that.
Yeah.
Yet, look at the precise mechanics of Nepal's reality right now. It was this exact digital connectivity, the 442% spike in digital engagement, the viral rap anthems hitting millions of views in hours, the global diaspora mobilizing on platforms across borders that literally built the foundation for this new government. It allowed a generation to organize and peacefully topple the old political guard.
That's a wild paradox.
It is. So here is the provocation for you to mull over. Can the very digital spaces that global experts warn are psychological traps actually serve as the foundation for a nation's democratic salvation?
What an incredible tension to consider. A psychological trap for the individual, but a megaphone for a democracy.
Exactly.
I hope you, listening, will take that thought with you today. Thank you so much for joining us on this special edition of The Deep Dive.
Thanks for listening.
For the full newsletter, the latest updates, and more essential resources, make sure to visit nepalidiaspora.net. Keep mulling over that contradiction. Remember that the guy holding the country's steering wheel used to drop beats before he dropped policies, and most importantly, stay incredibly curious. We will catch you next time.